Well, hello and welcome to this session of ExecuNet Masterclass. I'm your host, Tony Vlahos, and my guest this hour is the president and founder of Acquisition Finders, Mr. Aaron Paul. If you're thinking about buying an existing business, it could be a fantastic decision if you do it right. Aaron is with us today to explain what it takes so you can move forward confidently and successfully. It's really important stuff and part of our commitment here at ExecuNet to connect you with trusted advisors like Aaron, who can help you create the transformative results you want in your career, your work, and your life. So let's begin at the beginning with a few housekeeping things that will make your experience today all the more enjoyable and valuable. First, by now you should have received the slide deck for today's session. Many of you are nodding. Yes, I can tell. That's great. If you're sure you have not, fear not. You can get the slides directly from the screen in front of you. Just look under the handout section on your right. And if you have any trouble, of course, chat to us and my amazing colleague Kim will help you out. Second, don't be shy if you'd like to ask Aaron questions today, and I certainly encourage you to do that. You can chat those in and I'll do my best to relay as many as possible to him before the end of the session. Lastly, very important, please complete your evaluation before you go. I know that Aaron values your feedback and Kim and I do too. It really does help us serve you better. Well, I'm really happy to bring back today's session leader. Aaron Paul has managed a number of transactions for clients, both small and large, across a broad spectrum of industries. He's a featured speaker at workshops and webinars throughout the United States and regularly shares his trusted advice with the ExecuNet community. It's a pleasure to welcome him back. Aaron, they're all yours.
Tony, I appreciate it. Well, let's go ahead and get digging in on this. It's a fun topic to talk about. A lot of folks have definitely thought about buying a business. They just really don't understand the process and really the ways to go about it. So that's what today's session is all about. We're going to talk about what the marketplace looks like today, what we've been seeing with a number of transactions that we've been working on this year. We're going to talk about valuation. We're going to touch on that, and we'll also discuss a little bit about how you go about financing a transaction, and then we'll wrap it up with some case studies and just to give you guys some ideas on what we've done. For folks kind of in a similar situation coming out of a corporate environment, because that is the bulk of our clientele, or individuals that are coming out of the corporate world and saying, hey, I'm good. I'm out of that. I really want to find something to buy. I want to invest my money in something that I can run and be successful with. So let's go ahead and get started with a couple of quick quotes. I always like to start with some stuff from other folks that are maybe a little smarter than me on some of this. Peter Drucker says it's smarter, faster, cheaper to buy a business than it is to start one. I tend to agree with that, not just because that's what we do every day, but it is definitely less risky. So it definitely feels like it would be smarter. It's faster to a successful to start. You can build on somebody's past history. So definitely like that quote. Another one is entrepreneurship is living a few years of your life like most people won't, so you can live the rest of your life like most people can't. Definitely like that as well. A lot of folks putting in a lot of effort running their business, and they're ready to cash out, so to speak. And you, as somebody who might want to come in and buy that business, can continue that success. And hopefully you find a business that definitely funds your lifestyle, helps pay for itself, and then next thing you know is 5 or 6 years later, you've got yourself quite a little nest egg built up, and a good way to continue some income, whether you want to keep the business long term or go into retirement and maybe keep it as retirement income. But either way, it's definitely entrepreneurship is definitely something a lot of folks want to consider, whether it's franchising or buying a business. And that's really what we're going to talk about, is why now is such a good time. And really it comes down to a couple of things. The money right now is very cheap. It's not as cheap as it was a year ago, and it's about to get a little more expensive when the Fed raises rates in 2019. But the financing is still very advantageous. It's still very attractive. And we have a business owner population that's aging. I talked to a gentleman today, he was 68 and owned a great little business up in Pittsburgh, and hopefully it's going to be a really good fit for our client that's there. But great company, really nice margins, but somebody who is really ready to retire. So he said he's got a place in Florida. He said, I've got to go back up to Pittsburgh for the next couple of weeks, and then I'm trying to get back to Florida to stay for a while. So definitely wants to sell the business and retire to Florida. The biggest reason that folks in your situation coming out of the corporate environment typically want to buy a business rather than start one is that there's cash flow that's already existing. So if there's money coming in the door, you don't have to worry about funding your lifestyle while the business gets off the ground. So when you buy a business, or what most of our clients want when they buy a business, is an immediate paycheck as a salary replacement, and then they want the business to pay for itself. And all of that's very doable. We're going to go through a little case study and example on down or later on in the presentation, and I'll give you kind of what I've seen be successful. And it's just a metric. It's nothing that, it's definitely tried and true because we basically use that every day. But it's just something for you to think about as, is this something you really want to do? And then the biggest question is, can you do it financially? Does it make sense for you? So again, most people are buying a business for that replacement salary more than anything else, and then having something that they really like to do and hopefully grow that company. You've got that track record. Again, financing is very active, and it's significantly reduced risk than other options. A startup franchise or a startup business, again, you're having to fund your lifestyle while you're ramping up. When you buy a business, that track record and cash flow provides a really nice cushion as you get in, start your training, and really figure out how that business is being run. It's nice to have business coming in the door on day one, for sure. The reason a lot of people can't find a business to buy is it's very hard to uncover the right opportunity. It's kind of a catch-22 for a business owner, especially ones that are in their 60s. They want to sell their companies in a lot of cases, but they just don't want to tell people that they are ready to sell the business. And so you're sitting there going, I really want to sell this business to somebody who wants it, but I can't tell anybody I want to sell it because I'm worried about my employees finding out or my customers finding out. And then all of a sudden that's going to degrade the value of what I've built. So that's why it's difficult to find that right opportunity. Confidentiality is key. Keeping things quiet is key for these business owners. That's why 90% of people never find the right business. A lot of times they rely on a business broker to have identified a company in a particular geography, and then once hopefully that business fits their criteria and they can go and make an offer on it. So that becomes very difficult because you're not really looking for the businesses that meet your criteria. You're just talking to the business owners who have expressed an interest in a possible sale, and you may find yourself looking at ice cream shops and dry cleaners when really what you want to own is a medical equipment distribution business. So that's where the business for sale marketplace is so inefficient, and there's really nothing that you can do about that. That's the way it's always been for listing businesses. We'll talk about some ways to maybe bring some efficiencies into the process and show you ways that you can find these business owners who are ready to sell. So we'll definitely bring some ideas centered around that concept. Due diligence is always an issue. Again, talked to somebody today who was a referral from a client, and that was his big thing. Is he said, I want to make sure that the numbers that are being shown are true and accurate, and that's what due diligence is. You have to make sure that what's being represented is true, because you're going on the line for a lot of money when you buy a business. I mean, it's probably going to be, more than what you're paying for your house right now, as far as the loan amount and monthly payment, that kind of stuff. So due diligence is key, and sometimes you find things you don't want to find, and then you have to go out and tell that business owner, hey, I can't get my head wrapped around your numbers. I'm going to move on to another transaction, and you just kind of let it go. But again, that's something you have to consider when you're buying a business. The other part of it is it does cost you more money to buy a business than it does to start one from scratch. Again, that's where you have to look at opportunity cost. I'm going to invest more up front, but I'm also going to get more immediate payback with a salary and that kind of stuff, versus a startup where maybe all you're doing is investing in the initial inventory and lease payments and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden you're in business, and now you're just waiting on sales to come in, but the profits may not really be coming in for another 2 or 3 years. So that's where you have to weigh that opportunity cost. Does it make sense to do a startup instead of buying a business? So if you think about the process, and really this is what most people don't understand is, you know, when I want to buy a business, what does that look like? And the way I've always tried to explain it, and Tony's probably tired of hearing it, is it is just like buying a piece of property. The only problem is when you want to buy a piece of property, you can go out and look on realtor.com and the MLS and say, hey, I want to be in this 5 block area of Denver. Okay, great. Here are the houses that are for sale. Because when you want to sell a house, you put a sign in the yard. When you want to sell a business, you don't put a sign in the yard. You want to keep it as quiet as possible. Again, that's that whole catch-22 from a business owner perspective. So what I want to do is I want to table the finding for a little bit, and let's just say we have the business in hand. So the first thing we're going to say is, I think the business is worth this based on your historical financials. And the business owner says, well, I think it's worth, this much. So I think it's worth $500,000. The business owner says it's worth 600,000. Okay, great. Let's negotiate off of that. Let's see if we can come to a meeting of the minds, and making the assumption that we can, we're going to have a deal. So once we get that negotiation finalized, we're going to have a letter of intent to purchase. And that letter of intent is very similar to when you make an offer on a house. The letter of intent to purchase a home says, I'm going to purchase your house for X amount of dollars. When I'm buying that house, it's going to be contingent on a home inspection. It's going to be contingent on an appraisal, and it's going to be contingent on my ability to garner financing to purchase this home. So I'm going to buy it, but there are these contingent items out there that say, here's what I need in order to make this happen. So once you have that letter of intent in hand, you can go to your bank. I've had a lot of folks come to me and say, I'm going to go talk to my banker about getting pre-approved. And I always tell them, I always say, buying a business is not buying a home. When you go to a banker and say, I want to get pre-approved to buy a home, they're going to look at your income. They're going to tell you, okay, within these ratios, you can afford a house of up to this amount. And that's what you've got. You have a pre-approval from the bank. The problem with a pre-approval when you're buying an existing business is they don't care about you. They care about the business. And you don't know which business you're going to buy. So if that's the case, they have nothing to base a pre-approval on. So while I love the concept, it just doesn't really hold any water when we're going through this process of buying a business. So what you do have to show that you are a true buyer and you have a true deal on the table is you've got to have this letter of intent. You have to say, I've got an informal agreement to buy this business. This is the price I'm paying. Here's what I'm expecting. Now let's start the financing process. And that's step number 4. We start the financing process. The bank is going to do 2 things. They're going to underwrite the loan just like they would on a piece of property. they're going to order a third-party appraisal. So the underwriter, when they underwrite the loan for a business purchase, says, I need to make sure that Aaron can buy this business, can fund his lifestyle, so take a salary out of the business, and still have enough left over to cover the debt service. That's what the banker is looking for. And so that's why it's so important to have a deal in hand that already has a price on it so that they can look at those historical financials and say, this business can support that level of debt. I'm going to approve this loan. Now I'm going to go order an appraisal because I want to make sure that the business is worth what everybody thinks it is right now. So there will actually be a third party appraisal done as part of the financing package. Assuming that comes back fine, which most of the time it does, you're going to have due diligence where you're going to dig into the financial statements. You can do all this while the financing is going on. One of the things that I like to do is what we call cash proof, which is look at bank statements, make sure that the deposits are matching up with the revenues, all of that kind of stuff to make you feel good about what you're buying. While all that's going on, your attorney is going to draft a contract, an asset purchase agreement, probably a seller consulting agreement, a seller note. There's all kinds of documents that get done. And that's another differentiating point on buying a business versus buying a home is when you buy a home, forms are pretty much the same regardless. For $1 million house to a $50,000 house, the documents are all about the same. When you buy a business, the documents are all customized. It's all centered around what you're paying, how the deal is going to be structured, how the assets are being allocated. So there's a lot of things that go into that contract. So an attorney is a key component of you getting this deal closed. And then at the end, once everything's done and everybody's happy and everybody's agreed to all the documents, you close the deal, change the locks, and get started the next day. But that's, again, by putting it towards or putting it in the context of something that you've done in the past for most people, which is buying a home, the process doesn't seem so daunting. It's just that there are different components of the process as you're going through it. And the hardest part of the entire business buying process is finding the right business. Um, so why would you even want to go through all of those 6 steps and getting to this level? Other than, the market's definitely a good time. The financing begins very active. Um, let the business pay you and pay for itself. Most business owners that are aging, that are over 65, don't have an exit strategy. So when we approach them on behalf of a client, we get a lot of good response. We get a lot of people saying, hey, if you have somebody interested, I'm ready to talk. Whether it's a business that's doing 2 million in sales or 20 million in sales, we have those conversations every day in our offices. And so we definitely, we know that there are business owners out there ready to talk to somebody who is willing to show an interest and who has the capability to pull off a transaction. They're not going to sell it to their kids in a lot of cases. There's just not enough kids to buy all these businesses. And so what these business owners are doing is they're running the business today, trying to find a buyer potentially, or a potential buyer, or they're shutting the doors. A lot of them will just close up. I've had that conversation a few times where they've said, hey, if I don't sell this thing in the next couple of years, I'm just going to, shut the doors. And all that money goes away. That cash flow went away. All those sales went away. And so it's kind of frustrating because these people have built something up and they have value, but they just can't find somebody to give them what it's worth or willing to show an interest in that kind of business at the time that they need them to. So it can be, from a business owner perspective, it can be very frustrating. So just a quick synopsis of, today's typical buyers, and there's a reason we do this with ExecuNet, because a lot of folks that are in the ExecuNet community want to know about an entrepreneurship, and it's great because you are the potential buyers of these kinds of businesses. Most of our clients are coming out of the corporate environment, typically in their 40s or 50s. don't want to go back to the corporate environment and really want to find something to buy. Today's typical sellers, I probably can update this slide. I mean, I don't think anybody I've talked to in the last week has had less than 20 years of being in business. They've all been in business since the early 90s. Most of these businesses, or the ones that most of our clients are targeting, they have cash flows, pre-tax cash flows of between 300 and 2 million every year. Dull businesses are good. You'll talk to some of these business owners, and clients will come back and say, I like the guy and it's a great little business. It's just kind of boring. And boring's okay. Boring's making people money. So I think you need to make sure you double check the boring and see if you can inject a little life into it. Most of these business owners are burned out. They don't want to pursue growth opportunities. The reason is that's risky. It's an investment. They're trying to figure out how to get out, not stay in. So that's why they have these opportunities to grow. And if it was 20 years earlier in their life, they probably would have taken advantage of them. But it's, they're 65 and they say, hey, I don't really care about that right now. That's for younger blood to take advantage of. Why most buyers fail? Because again, remember that one slide said 90% of buyers fail in finding the right business. They can't find the right opportunity. You have to be proactive. I think that's the key thing, and that's the message we're going to, harp on in the next little bit. You need to be flexible. There is not going to be a perfect business. It's not. Even if the perfect business sat in front of you today, as you dig in, there's going to be warts on that business. And you have to decide, am I willing to deal with that? Is that something I can handle and I can clean up? Or is it something that's a deal killer for me? I need to go find something else. But there's got to be a need to be flexible. Like one of our clients was so dead set on looking at industrial distribution. Well, by the time he's dug into industrial distribution, he's like, okay, I don't like that anymore. I've got to move on to something else. Well, luckily we had found a lot of other things, and now we're down further down the road on service businesses. And so that's why you've got to have more than one option. You have to juggle possible deals. I can't tell you how many times we've put 3 or 4 proposals out there in 2 or 3 days, to 3 different businesses or 4 different businesses, and whichever one comes back with the best deal is the one we're going to close on. You may have to do that. So think of it like that: is build flexibility into your process. Understand that the perfection is not attainable in this world. It's just not going to happen, and be willing to accept that and know that I'm going to find a good business for me. I'm going to pay a good price for it. I want to get a good price, a good deal on it. But I understand that it's not going to be perfect. I just have to find something that's the best possible fit. Family concerns are another one. Can't tell you how many times I've had that conversation with somebody and said, oh, well, I haven't talked to my wife or I haven't talked to my husband. That's my first thing is, after that first conversation, make sure you're talking to your family about this, because it is a big investment, not only of money, but of time and effort, and make sure that they're on board with this. Are you really committed? Do you really want the independence and the corresponding responsibility of owning and running a successful business? I mean, because look, I'd love to say every business is absentee and it could be run by itself and you don't have to, be there to run it effectively. That's not true. It's not. You're gonna have to be involved. Now it's up to you to maybe get down the road of building a management team and stuff like that. But initially, you're going to be in this business. You're going to have to spend time in it. Another reason most buyers fail is overanalyzing and analysis paralysis. You've got to be ready to make multiple offers. You've got to be ready to consider multiple contingencies. You're going to make decisions with incomplete information. I mean, you're gonna see something, and you're not going to get down to the nth detail every single time. You can as you get into due diligence, but a business owner's patience is going to wear thin after about the third time of coming back to them with a list of 50 questions. So you've got to be respectful of their time and be able to say, okay, as long as this looks like X, I'm going to put an offer in and move this thing down the road and then come back and fill in the gaps here. Because a business owner needs to know that you are tied and ready to close the or pull the trigger on a potential deal and close it before he's going to really let you dig in on the whole, I need to see an invoice from 2012 that you did for a customer that had a complaint, stuff like that. I mean, you're not going to get to that level of detail on this stuff. So where do I find a business to buy? Couple of ways. There's the average search, which means you go out to online listing services, BizBuySell and BizQuest. The odds are very low you're going to find a good business there. Again, it's just a function of the marketplace. Business owners are reluctant to deal with business brokers. There are a few out there that I deal with. I really like them. Even they would say, hey, we get 20 listings a year, 5 of them are really good, and the other 15 are just kind of filler, for us. And they're good brokers. And so it's hard, and it's that whole confidentiality, catch-22 situation of I want to sell it, but I don't want to tell anybody I want to sell it. CPA and attorney referrals are also a spot a lot of people can find a business. It's probably easier for us. We know more CPAs, we know more attorneys than individuals who are out there looking. The hidden gem acquisition search, that's what we call our search process, and I'll talk about that. It's proactive. You start looking for a hidden gem, you develop a target profile, and you get started. Because what we have found is that if there are 50,000 businesses listed for sale right now, there are probably 10 times that number that would actually have a conversation with you if you expressed an interest. So you actually go out, send a letter, send an email, have a phone conversation about, I'm interested in buying your business. I've looked at your website. I've seen what you do. I feel like it could be a good fit. I need to know more information, but I'd like to have a conversation with you about a possible sale. Sometimes you're going to get the door slammed in your face. We do every day. And then you get the door opened and they say, come on in, let's have a chat about it, or let's talk about it on the phone, or let's schedule a conference call. And those are the guys you want to talk to, because those are the hidden gems. They're the ones that aren't talking to a broker, not going to list the business for sale, but if you show interest, they want to have the conversation. And that's what we have centered our business around, is that whole concept. And just being proactive is what does it. You just have to get out there and talk to these business owners. So if you're thinking about, like, let's say I'm ready to buy a business. So I've done a little bit of preliminary research, and I know that if I go out on BizBuySell, I can see whatever listings are available in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, great. I'm going to go out, type in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm going to see all these businesses that are currently available. So about half of what you're going to see is what we would term as retail or food, beverage, and entertainment. That could be, so retail could be dry cleaners, convenience stores, that little boutique down the street that, hey, that whatever's in there keeps going out of business. Food, beverage, and entertainment tends to center around bars, restaurants, fast food franchises, that kind of stuff. But the small little ones, those are the ones that most of our clients want to be in, which is manufacturing, health and medical services, business and professional services, distribution, that kind of stuff. Those are the little bubbles. And so now, if that's the kind of business you're looking for, think about the numbers. So if there's 50,000 businesses listed and I want to own a manufacturing business, so there's 50,000 listed right now, 5% of those are going to be manufacturing. So that's 2,500 businesses across the entire United States. So what you're hoping is that wherever you're at, if you're looking for a manufacturing business, that one of those 2,500 businesses is in a geography that you want to be in, is in the right industry for you, and is making enough money to fulfill what you need, which is a replacement salary and to be able to fund the debt service. And so now you kind of see that sometimes this buying a business thing can look like a needle in a haystack, and it's a big giant haystack, and there's only one needle in there. So it can take a while to find the right business. What we've found is that, hey, here are the needles that we want to find. Let's just go look for those. And the haystack gets smaller and smaller and smaller as you go because you've narrowed it down. You're not looking at this big, giant universe of businesses. You've got it narrowed down to 400 or 500 opportunities. And hey, I just need to find the 40 or 50 that are ready to sell. And those are the ones I'm going to talk to and spend time with. And that's what being proactive is all about. Again, like I said, most business owners don't list, but there are so many that want to have a conversation. We've developed a process to help find businesses that fit criteria for clients. Our goal is to find all the interested sellers, contact all the businesses that match your criteria. You are the only person looking at those businesses in most cases. Sometimes somebody slides in on us and grabs one because we didn't move fast enough, but it's rare. It's just less competitive. You are finding the best opportunity and the best fit for your situation. And it takes about 4 to 6 months. That's pretty much the way to think about how long this is going to take. Again, that's a question a lot of people have is, hey, I'm really interested in setting this up and getting this started. I need to plan out the next few months of my life. Okay, well, guess what? It's going to take 6 months to get this done. And it's because it takes 2 months to find them, 2 months to negotiate a deal and pin it all down, and then 2 months to get it financed and closed. And you can kind of see where the process just takes a little bit of time, and it's okay. You need to be patient because you need to find the right business for you. So the way to think about the process, and again, this is something you can do on your own. I mean, it's not, what we do is not rocket science. It's just that a lot of people don't know how to get going with it. Um, is you got to develop a profile. What kind of businesses are you interested in? What are my financing options? What can I afford to buy? Find all the possible candidates in your chosen geography, size range, industry. Find them all, and then you got to call them. You got to reach out. You've got to share your interest in a potential purchase of their business. That's the big component of this. I have to show that I'm interested in potentially buying your business. And the business owners will want to talk to you, the ones that are most interested. And then from there, that's when you get to say, okay, I think this one's a great fit. This one's not such a great fit. And you get to start ranking them and really deciding what makes the most sense for you. You're going to qualify the people that are interested. You got to have 3 years of P&L and balance sheet information, several face-to-face meetings or conference calls. I mean, it may be one or two. The first one's usually a cup of coffee, get to know you meeting. Then let's really dig in on these numbers, and then the next meeting is questions and, hey, I really like to tour the facility, that kind of stuff. So that's what our process is centered around throughout the years of how do we find businesses for clients to potentially purchase. So that's that whole little component of I've got these businesses over here of the business buying processes. I've got my universe of potential sellers. I've found the one. I'm ready to make my offer. And that's when we go into the next step of how do we value that business? Can I afford to purchase this business? And that's really the next phase of the process. The slide's a little hard to see, but there where it shows, it says owner's earnings are the best way to measure the success and value of a business. And that comes from Warren Buffett, who I think we would all agree is probably the best purchaser of existing businesses that we've ever known. He's bought Coca-Cola, and I mean, he's invested in everything. And his whole thing is centered around cash flow, repeatable cash flow. What am I making off of these businesses? I don't care about the next big thing and all that stuff. If you can't make money selling it, providing that service, doing whatever it is you're doing, I don't want to invest in it. And that's what I think small business purchases have to be centered around is cash flow. How much is this business owner taking out of the business? That's the money I can use to pay myself a salary and fund the debt service on this business. So when you think about value, cash flow is king. You have to determine the true owner benefit. And that's a key component of this is business owners like to funnel a lot of personal stuff through their company, automobiles, cell phones for kids, all that kind of stuff. I do it. So, if anybody was looking to buy, my business, that's the kind of stuff that they're going to have to look at because, hey, this business makes more money than it shows on the tax return, but I'm paying all my expenses pre-tax, and you as an employee, you pay taxes and then you pay your expenses. So it's a different way of looking at things. That's where you have to figure out that owner benefit. You got to consider trends. What's the competition look like? What's the business look like? What's the multiplier of that cash flow? For most companies, it's going to be between 2 and 4 times cash flow. So when you're thinking about the formula, so how do I find net owner benefit? It's actually pretty simple. I like to take the tax return. This is the net profit before tax. I've got owner compensation, so he's been taking a salary out. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to add depreciation, interest, and amortization. I'm going to add back those personal benefits, those fringe things. And then the one-time expenditures, maybe there was a fire or hail damage on a roof or something like that. There was an expense that's not quite typical every single year. So I'm going to add that back. So I'm going to get to an adjusted EBITDA number. That's something that a lot of people are familiar with. But then I'm going to subtract any CapEx. So capital expenditures. Maybe I need to buy a new truck every 2 years. Okay, great. We're going to figure out what that looks like, what that capital expenditure looks like, and then we're going to factor that into cash flow because that's money I have to invest to keep the business going. So I need to be aware of that. And so that's how you find net owner benefit. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take that and multiply it. So you're going to multiply it by 2 and 4, and then that's going to build out your range of potential value. So one of the other questions a lot of folks ask us is, what can I afford? What do I've got X amount of dollars available. I need to replace this much salary. What can I afford a business that can even do that? So again, it's pretty simple. You got to figure out, what do you need in salary? Does the business qualify for SBA financing? Because that is key. SBA financing is cheaper. There's less restrictive covenants on it than typical bank financing. And I'd say 80% of the people that bought a business last year with us used SBA financing to do it. What's your down payment? So how much liquidity do you have to buy this business? You're going to need a 10 to 20% down payment. There may be some equity co-investors out there that would potentially assist for down payment assistance. But again, the big thing is what can you do by yourself? You don't want to bring investors in unless you have to. It's just another party to deal with. So if you think about a simple formula, and this is the formula I was talking about. This is uber simple, but it works, and it works it works every time. So if you need a salary of, let's say, $150,000, so I need a salary of 150, I'm going to multiply that by 2. So now what I need this business to support is a $300,000 cash flow, because I'm going to take the first 150, I'm going to take that in salary. The other 150 is there for debt service because the business needs to pay me, and then it needs to pay for itself. So if I think about that, I'm at 150 times 2, that's 300,000. Then I take that number and I multiply that by 3. That's what I'm going to pay for the business. And 3 is right in the middle of the 2 to 4 multiple range. So now I'm at 900,000, and then I need 15% of that as my down payment. So in that case, I need $135,000 in down payment money to buy that business. That's going to give me my salary. The business is going to pay for itself, and I'm going to have a surplus left. That formula works. And if you're sitting there thinking about it right now, just do the math real quick in your head and say, I need a $250,000 salary. I need a $300,000 salary. That's great. The numbers work regardless of the amount. So just think about it like that. And if you keep your multiple in that 3-ish range, the numbers work. I can vouch for that. I haven't looked at thousands of financial statements and doing that calculation, I can definitely vouch for that. What are your options for financing? Okay, so now I know what I can afford. I know what a business needs to be valued at in order for me to get to this number. So how am I going to pay for this? I don't have all the cash, so I'm going to go finance this thing. SBA loans, most individuals are using SBA loans today. You're going to need some cash as your down payment, whether it comes from your 401k and your IRA plan's penalty free, or you've got the cash sitting in your bank account. It has to be cash. So you can't necessarily say, I'm going to go take a home equity loan and then I'm going to go buy a business. That's pretty hard to do. So just so you know, it's not really an option. The real options tends to center around I've got the money in hand or it's in my 401k. Seller financing is a key component of the deal. If you're paying somebody $1 million for the business, it's nice if they didn't get $1 million in cash at close and take off to the Bahamas. You want to tie them to the business and your success, and seller financing does that. We may say, hey, Mr. Seller, we're going to give you $1 million, but we're only going to give you 800 at close. The other 200 is going to be paid out over 5 years or 10 years or whatever you decide. And we're going to make sure that you don't get all your money and leave us in the lurch. And so you want them to have some skin in the game. Private investors, friends and family, if it's PE investor, if it's a large deal, that tends to be the way most guys or most folks will finance these transactions. So when you think about the SBA, and this is a lot of misconceptions about the SBA is, I have to apply to the Small Business Administration to get a loan. That is not what you're doing. You're just going to the bank. You're going to Wells Fargo, you're going to Chase, you're going to BB&T, whatever bank, and you're going to say, hey, I'm going to buy this business. It qualifies under the SBA program. You can use these guarantees from the SBA, Mr. Banker, to cover the collateral shortfall. Because we all know banks don't like to lend money unless you've already got money. So they'll give you $1 million if you have $1 million in the bank. The SBA guarantee, definitely covers that collateral shortfall. So that's what makes banks aggressive with the acquisition financing. There are thousands of lenders out there today. And if you've got a down payment of, like I said, 10 to 20%, we can definitely show that there's some relevant experience in your background to, help you be a good owner of this business. And then we've got a good price. You're going to find financing. It is, I will tell you this, 5 years ago it was difficult. Financing was harder than it is today. There's more players. The structures are easier or more flexible for everybody. It's definitely a great time. The SBA does like seller financing. Not only is it a good deal for you, it's a good deal for them to have the skin in the game. SBA finances up to $5 million of a transaction. So that's a pretty substantial business that you're buying. And then procedures, recent changes have made deal structures more flexible. So there's a lot of things you can do from a financing perspective that you maybe haven't been able to do in the past. And it's an exciting time. I mean, I love going through the financing process with clients. I love trying to get a good deal on that because, a quarter of a point or half a base, 50 basis points, I mean, that's a big savings on these kind of loans. And, being able to get a fixed rate for 5 years or 10 years versus a variable rate, I mean, those are all things that you've got to take notice of and be aware that, hey, there are other options out there. So that's why you have to create a competitive environment, not only, for the business that you want to buy, but for the financing piece of it. If you can create some competition there, all of a sudden you're going to get the best deal on your financing package because you've got 10 banks who've given you their best deal, and you pick the best one, and you pit two or three of them against each other. Next thing you know is you're saving yourself a ton of money. So that's what you got to do with financing is, definitely take advantage of the marketplace that's out there. So real quick, got three little success stories to kind of go through. Um, Had a client, 450 to invest. He was taking it out of his 401k plan. We identified about 50 companies. We made multiple offers. Again, he had some flexibility. He understood that, this first one may not work out. That's okay. I want to go to the next one. And I need to make sure these people are really interested in selling their business. And the only way to do that is to stick a number in front of them. He ended up purchasing a wire harness manufacturer, 1.1 million in net income. Again, around a 3 multiple, a little higher at 3.5 million. We financed that with an SBA loan with a local lender. Another one, 300,000 to invest. A lot of businesses we found made multiple offers again. Ended up with a swimming pool supply service business, about 700, 750 in cash flow, 2.1 purchase price. Again, a local lender rather than a national lender. And then another one ended up buying a landscape business with about 650 in cash flow, a $1.8 million purchase price. Again, kind of thinking around that whole 3 times cash flow number. He was able to put in, kept his down payment around 300, 350 to buy that business, and is doing great with it. And that's landscaping. Landscaping is nice because it has recurring revenue. So that's always a good business to take a look at. So next steps, that's always a question people have, and as we're wrapping this up, it's definitely something, as you think about things. Next steps from here are really, they're all on you. I mean, you got to evaluate your desire to move forward. It is time for a self-assessment. What kind of business am I interested in? What are the broad industry categories? Use the formula to figure out, hey, I can afford, this much, or a business that's this size. What's my geography? If I don't want to stay where I'm at for the next 5 to 10 years, well, where do I want to move so that I'm looking for a business there rather than, here where I'm at and I know I don't want to stay. Assemble a team of advisors. You're going to need a CPA. You're going to need an attorney to pull this off. So just know that that's the case. You don't have to have them when you start, but it is good that you're going to need them. Get proactive. Start today. Start with the self-assessment. Just think about things. We have a workbook we send out, and it always helps, with that self-assessment stuff of, what am I most interested in? What can I afford? And then once you're proactive and you built that target profile, start calling people, start talking to these business owners, because if you don't talk to them, they're not calling you. They're not going to call you and say, hey, I heard you're looking for a business to buy. I'd like to sell you mine. That's not how this works. You've got to get out there and start looking. And give yourself time. Patience is good. You want to uncover the right opportunity. You're going to look at multiple deals. You're going to make multiple offers. All of a sudden, that's how you end up with the best possible transaction for you at this given time. So that's what you got to get comfortable with, and that's what kind of the way to think about the patience aspect of this. So again, I know Tony's going to take some questions. I hope you've chatted some into him. Definitely here to answer them for the next 10 or 15 minutes. And if there's anything at all, just feel free to ask.
Okay, Aaron, thank you. We do have questions from the class. You did a really sweet job of describing your engagement model earlier. In other words, what you actually do. But the question on everyone's mind is, how do you get paid?
I can't get out of this without
You
somebody
can't get
asking
away from that.
that. Well, that's fine. It is a very fair question to ask. So, yeah, we're paid on a successful transaction. So we have to. So when we want you to be successful with this, so we're trying to get a deal closed. So we charge based on a successful transaction. It's percentage of the cost of the business, similar to a real estate transaction, you're paying 6%. Ours, I can share our fee agreement with anybody who's interested. I'm more than happy to do that. But typically, our fee agreement is on the first 2 million of deal value, it's 5%, and that's pretty much where we're at. So again, only on a successful transaction, and we do roll that into the financing package. So
Okay.
it's not like it's out of pocket.
Mhm.
Very similar again to real estate. Very similar.
Right. Now, we know you're not an attorney or a CPA, but do you have a sense of how they are paid? What are their typical fees?
Sure. Again, this was a conversation this morning, so it's pretty fresh. Attorneys can charge a lot for this. I've had clients who let their attorneys kind of get out of hand. And by out of hand, I mean, I think a reasonable rate, and again, it depends on the market, but a reasonable fee for getting all of the paperwork done and in place is going to be between $5,000 and $10,000. I think if you pay more than that, I think you've overpaid. I mean, I've had clients pay a lot more than that, and it's been very frustrating because they just let their attorney kind of take over. So you need to be cognizant of that as you're going through this because they charge by the hour. Um, and we try to help alleviate as much of that cost as possible. We're involved, from with the legal perspective, not as an attorney or anything, but just trying to help, minimize calls and minimize hours, that kind of stuff. So we're definitely there to help with that. A CPA engagement for like if somebody was doing my due diligence work, it's probably going to cost between 2,000 and 3,000 to do what I term the cash proof, which is looking at bank statements and stuff like that. I think that's a very fair rate. I've seen it lower than that. I've seen it a little bit higher than that. So if you're thinking about it, 10 to 12,000 with attorney and CPA all rolled up, I think that's a good figure to use.
Okay. Does your company make introductions to lawyers and CPAs?
We can if we know folks in the area. We've done business all over the U.S. and there are definitely, like here in Memphis where I'm based. I had a client say he was going to use this particular firm, and I just about choked. I was like, "Oh, please don't use those guys." And we ended up, it was just that one attorney at that particular firm. But here in Memphis, I've got 3 or 4 folks. In Atlanta, I have 3 or 4 folks. So if we've done transactions, then yes, I can definitely make introductions to the right folks. And truthfully, one of the things that has been really successful is a couple of people I know here that are friends. I'll ask them and hey, can you refer to me to somebody in Charlotte or somebody in Raleigh or somebody over in Oklahoma City? Oh yeah, I know. I've got a good buddy. He'll do it, and here, talk to him. And so yeah, I can definitely help. We can definitely help with that. CPAs are a little harder because they don't tend to be as um, I guess they don't necessarily always have somebody in that particular market, but we can always get started, help somebody get started for sure.
Mhm. So we've covered your fees, we've covered attorneys' fees, CPAs a little bit. Let's lean into more questions around cost. Beyond the down payment, could you replay for us what capital is needed to get started?
Well, mostly it's going to be centered around the down payment. When
Okay.
you buy a business, generally as part of the purchase price, we're structuring working capital into the deal. So like recently, the transaction we're closing tomorrow in Massachusetts. There's a little bit of working capital that's coming in. So as part of the overall purchase price, we're getting some accounts receivable. So we've got money coming in the door. We're not having to fund operations strictly out of cash. And honestly, you get one time to talk to a bank. And so if you need extra working capital, we try to build it into your financing package. We may build in a big line of credit or something that you may never tap. I mean, you may only tap it for the first 2 or 3 months, and you may not need that much of it, but it's easier to go ahead and get it. And then if you find, 2 or 3 years later you're not using it, just pay it back or just close that line of credit. You want to build that flexibility in, but in most cases, we are as part of the purchase price, we're bringing over working capital like inventory and accounts receivable. So it's not like I'm going to spend $300,000 to buy this business and then I'm going to fund it with another $300,000 out of pocket. We don't
Mhm.
want to do
Right. Aaron, can you use the assets of the business you're acquiring as collateral for financing?
that. They're going to use it anyway. So collateral, yes. Down payment, no. I
Okay.
guess that's the best way to think about it. I mean, hey, I have personally, this is personally, bought a business whose assets had value greater than the amount of the loan I was going to take out to buy the business. So it was over collateralized. It was real estate, fixed equipment, inventory, accounts receivable. Everything was more, everything, and it was by a lot. And I still had to put 10% down. So even though it's got a ton of assets, you are still going to come in with cash. It is a guarantee.
Okay. You covered SBA loans in quite detail. Can SBA loans be obtained without personal guarantees?
No,
Okay.
that's not going to happen. And
All
in
right.
fact, I will tell you, most banks are not going to do any kind of loan without a personal guarantee. So I know, and that has come up a couple of times, and some people just don't want to do it. But I mean, even as a business owner today, with like, let's say I owned a business today, and I actually had this come up. The gentleman wanted a $500,000 line of credit. He said, "I don't want to personally guarantee it." I said, "Well, then you're not going to get it from a bank." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Even if it was 100% guaranteed by the assets of the business, like you're going to buy 500,000 in inventory, and you got that inventory sitting there, and it guarantees that line of credit, you are still going to personally guarantee that loan, even though it's fully collateralized. You still are going to personally guarantee the loan, and that's the SBA loan doesn't get away from that. It's just it's always going to be there.
Mhm. Aaron, this is a really big question. What is the number one reason most business owners succeed? And conversely, can you pinpoint the number one reason they fail?
As far as like, I guess from an existing business owner perspective, or from somebody looking to buy a business.
Someone who's just bought it and wants to keep it going successfully.
I gotcha. Learn how to drink from a fire hose is what will make you successful. That first 6 months is tough. Our clients would tell you that. It's brand new stuff. I mean, and don't think you can do it all on your own, because you just can't. You may have the MBA, you may have been top of your class at Harvard and all that fun stuff, and think you know how to run a business, and you may know how to run a business, but you don't know how to run your new business that you just bought. Like, you just have no clue. And so what you just got to be willing to soak up as much as you can from that business owner, because the way to look at it is, these people have been around for 20, 30, 40 years. You don't know you don't know what you don't know in that kind of business. And so just, you've got to be patient. You've got to be willing to soak up a lot, and like I said, the biggest thing is, don't try to do it all on your own. That business owner, especially if there's seller financing involved, wants to make sure you're successful.
Mhm.
The ones that have struggled the most are the ones that tend to, it's my way or the highway kind of folks, and that's okay. In a little while, after it's your business for a couple of years, you can be my way or the highway. But honestly, the ones that have a little bit of flexibility and are willing to learn are the ones that end up being the most successful.
Okay, we're going to start to wrap this up, Aaron.
Okay.
First, though, we've got other questions that I didn't have time to get to. They're more individualized in nature. I'm going to encourage you, please follow that link that you're looking at. and let us know what those questions are. We'll connect you directly with Aaron and be happy to take those questions after class. Aaron, thank you so much for making time for sharing your insight as always. Thank you all for your attention today and your marvelous questions. Again, I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them, but time has run out. Aaron, any final thoughts before we officially wrap up today's session?
I think I try to leave it the same every time. To me, it's always centered around if it's something you want to do, you just got to take the next step. It's nothing it's, like I said, the business owners aren't going to call you and tell you that they're ready to sell. You've got to go talk to them. So you got to be proactive and you got to take the next steps. And so to me, that's the biggest thing is have the conversation with your family, say I'm ready to do this, and then get to it. Because once you get started, you never know what you're going to find. That's the best part about it.
As always, great and encouraging advice. Thank you again. Thank you all. And I look forward to seeing you at the next ExecuNet Masterclass. Bye for now.